All right, now it's time for the top 5 segment, man. And this one's going to be exciting because maybe we have some different opinions on it. And I have an honorable mention that I don't want to mention until the very end. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what everybody thinks. But this week, it's going to be top 5 franchise properties that went too long. Of course, you have some in your mind that you're like, yeah, that one for sure. But then you still have fan bases that will still go see them, obviously, because they're huge moneymakers. So it's very interesting to see the balance of the counterculture, to see how everything interacts with each other. But back to the original format. I don't know why we switched up last week. It was kind of funny. But this week, for my number 5 goes to Indiana Jones. I've been very vocal about this one. I don't like Indiana Jones, but I don't think you should have even went past the second one. There's 4, 5, 4.
I want to say this last one was the 5th one, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it seemed, because Raiders of the Lost Ark, that was the second one, right?
No, Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first one.
Was the first one? Okay. So I don't know. Like I said, I've never been a huge fan of these, so I just don't think they could have continued moving forward. I mean, once we got to the Crystal Skull bullshit, where it's like talking about aliens, and then obviously this last one did not do well at all. Nobody was talking about it. I just don't think it should have kept moving forward, especially when I feel like, Harrison is a very interesting guy to see where he actually wants to be and where he doesn't want to be, because he's got that sarcastic, deep undertone of a personality anyway. So like, you never know if he really wants to be there or not. And that kind of shows a little bit in some instances. But yeah, number 5 for me, Indiana Jones.
I do agree. I enjoy Indiana Jones. I am a fan, but yeah, I do think that maybe it should have just been the original and the sequel and then end it. The third one, I think everybody admits kind of wasn't what it should have been, and then to continue after that one probably was a mistake. So I would agree with you there. I would agree with you there. I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and then Indiana Jones and
the Last Crusade. Last Crusade, and then Crystal Skull.
Right.
And then,
So, but anyway, I would agree with you. I think that maybe this thing works with the first 2 and then stop. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm probably going to take some heat for my number 5, and I don't care. Because, and I want to preface that I have thoroughly enjoyed this franchise, and I liked every film, even the last one. But I think it's time. We know everything we need to know about Sidney Prescott. It's over. It's over, people. It's like, Scream. I'm talking Scream. You can only keep going back to the well so many times, okay? You have done well with exploring outside. You've done well with bringing in different characters. You've done well with kind of like, but it's all, we've been there, done that now. And now it's a cash grab. Now they're trying to bring back, Neve Campbell and pay her a ton of money because they know these things keep making money. If you're going to do it, make this one the last one. Please, just make it the last one. Because they have been good. And I feel like you don't want to continue to run this thing into the ground where they become bad and people regret it. Right? So just, if you want to use this last one, now that Sydney's coming back, to definitively wrap up her storyline and just put a solid, we can't go any further end to her story, do that. But let it go after that. Please, let it go after that. This was a really original idea that worked really well, and a lot of spin-offs, movies that were similar spawned from it. Movies that were spoofs of it spawned from it. And it was all good, but it's time to let it go. That's all I'm saying. We have screamed our last scream. It's time to let it go. My number 5, Scream. Stop making them.
I know, right? I mean, especially after, your 2 people dropped out the last time to where you have to freaking
Bring
get
Sydney. Yeah.
Sydney
I
back.
mean,
Yeah, like
exactly. Your attempt to move it forward without the original characters, well, you can't do that now.
yeah,
So
because
just
I
like,
mean, you left departed from one because of political views or like activist views, whatever you want to call it. And then Jenna Ortega obviously is a mega star now
yeah, yeah.
and being in anything and everything. So it's like you're not as important as Beetlejuice or Wednesday. So
No. No, no.
it's funny. It's funny. But yeah, good pick. Even though, yeah, I'm right there with you. I still enjoy them, but
Yo,
yeah,
yeah, I
don't
love
go
them,
too
but
far.
you know, I want to continue to love them. That's my point.
Yeah.
So just don't kill it.
Exactly, exactly. Number four for us is one of those that we've talked about a million times, so it shouldn't be by any surprise. So when this topic of conversation comes up, you should expect this to be on both of our lists. And
Yes.
we're talking about Fast and Furious, the whole Fast and Furious franchise. Really, they got even before Paul Walker died, because we always say that it should have ended before or after Paul Walker died, which it should have.
Totally.
Even before that, there were still some in between there, like Fast and Furious, or like that they all have weird titles that incorporate that combination. It started to get a little cheesy. It started to get to where you're not racing anymore. You're like performing heists. You're like bank robbers. You're doing things for the government. You're on the run from the government. It started to be this unchanging event of just too much happening all at once. So I just feel like, it's one of those things where it's sad to say because it has made some people's career. Like I saw, this past weekend, for example, that Tyrese, he's in the
Yeah.
new 1992 movie. It's his film, and Vin Diesel went and supported him. Michelle Rodriguez went to support him, and I completely loved seeing that because it is a family, but it has turned into a point where you feel like you're getting too much of this. So yeah, I mean that's just my opinion. I don't feel like it should keep going. It was supposed to end with 10, but they keep going,
They're
They
filming
keep
one now,
going.
from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
So
think this is 11 that they're filming
yeah, he
now.
just posted a
Um,
picture with like Paul Walker's original car. Apparently,
yeah.
it's back or like.
Uh, Goodness gracious. But yeah, that's my number four, Fast and
Yeah,
Furious.
I'm gonna keep this plain and simple too. My number four, sure, let's go with it. Fast and Furious, all for all the same reasons. This was a
Yeah.
really original idea that worked really well, and it probably could have been a great standalone. But
Yeah.
okay, if you wanted to do a couple more, great. But
Whatever, yeah.
definitely should have ended after Paul Walker's death. The whole story, in my opinion, the family was him and Paul's character. And
Yeah.
with that was what the whole thing was based around. To have to start bringing in all these other, it didn't work for me. You should have. And also, you often see Vin Diesel break down in tears talking about Paul and the importance of that relationship and how away from the franchise in real life they were family. And
Right.
in my opinion, you're taking away from that. You're
You are.
spoiling that relationship, that real life family bond,
It's
and
exploited.
it's
Yeah.
exploiting it. And after 11 fucking movies, let it go, man, because at this point you're now just tarnishing that relationship and that family, and it's time to just walk away from it. I totally agree.
Yeah, man, it sucks. It sucks. It's turned into a cash grab. That's been
It's
the
totally,
term
that's
of
what it is. It's like I
it's been
mean,
the term of the episode 270 cash grab.
yeah, cash
So
grab.
be sure. It's crazy. But another one too, number three for both of us is The Walking Dead. In my opinion, this one kind of, which is unfortunate because it was leading up to such a monumental moment with bringing in Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan, and this was supposed to be such an epic storyline. But season seven was the start of the downfall. That's in my opinion, because then you had certain characters either die off, or you had certain characters, one or two seasons later, leave in a helicopter and never come back. and like all of these different things. So it's just of course you keep introducing the new colonizations in this post-apocalyptic world, but and then you start, losing the reason that people wanted to start watching this show. Um, and I mean it's hard too because with a show like this, you can't keep going, and I think that's what The Last of Us is learning. And obviously, with it being based off a video game and not a comic book, there's some differentiations there. But I mean, you can't keep going too far because you're gonna end up just telling the same story over and over again, just in a little bit different way. And I think that's what they're kind of doing. Because they have these spin-offs that are still doing the same thing, and it's just become so unfortunate because the first 6 seasons were gold, I feel like. But then once you get past that, it starts to get a little rough.
Well, I think first of all, it was a brilliant adaptation from the graphic novel. They did a
Yeah.
really good job. They took a little liberty here, a little liberty there,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it was a really stellar adaptation from the graphic novel, and it was rocking and rolling. I think where they made the big mistake, and where they could have probably continued for a few more seasons and had the audience that they had initially, is when they didn't follow through with the storyline properly with Negan and Carl. And
Yeah.
and that's where, in my opinion, they fucked up. Because they just went completely away from the graphic novel. Completely away from it. People were a little disturbed when they saw that graphic novel come to life with Negan bashing the shit out of Glenn's head and like fucking that. And I know that offset a few people that weren't familiar with the graphic novel. They're like, whoa, wait, what the fuck? Like, this is violent, crazy stuff. But they could have gotten over that. Because the storyline after that becomes the switch of Carl taking control. Carl, like, the whole thing is that Carl kind of came underneath Negan's wing and then basically betrays Negan and becomes the badass. He's the one that now runs the camp. And he's not his dad. He is not Rick. He's like, I've been fucking my eyes shot out. I've been through some shit. I don't take shit. I will kill you and not think twice. I'm a fucking badass. And that relationship, the damage between him and Rick, the bond between him and Negan, and then him asserting himself into control of the camp and being the different leader and leading forward. That, in my opinion, had they gone that route, would have saved the show, because those relationships and that story keeps people engaged. And you're like, oh, shit, Carl is, kind of when they walked away from that, I just think people, then they tried to spin Negan into a different way, and it just didn't work. For me, that's what killed it for me. And I think if you weren't going to stick to the storyline with Carl, you should have just ended the show and walked away. To me, it became, like the theme of our show, a money grab when you start rewriting the story and you're going to, we're going to take Daryl and Carol and we're going to do this. And then we're going to put Rick on him and he's going to disappear. And Michonne's going to... They were setting up what they already knew were going to be sequels down the line. Money grab. And once you start planning for future sequels, knowing that you're going to try to spin off and do things, you're in trouble. It didn't work. It didn't work. I didn't hate Fear the Walking Dead. I thought it was a smart idea to show the stuff that led up to The Walking Dead and then connect the two stories. I thought that was a good idea, and I think they did a pretty good job of weaving those two shows together to where they eventually cross and you see how it all started. But that's all you needed. That's all you needed. We didn't need the rest of it. We don't need Negan and Maggie in New York. We don't need... I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and I love all of it, but we don't need that. We don't need Daryl in France. What the fuck is that? Like, no.
It's becoming the Kardashian spin.
Yeah, I just, I'd rather see Norman Reedus move on and become Ghost Rider. That's why
Right.
we don't need him as Daryl anymore. We don't need him as Daryl anymore. Just, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But that was my opinion. That's where I think they died, is when they went away from the Carl. I was so excited when I saw his eye get shot out and like, fucking, yeah, they're going to do it. And then didn't. And then they fucking killed Carl. I'm like, wait, what the fuck?
Right? It was, kind of crazy. Well, number 2 for me goes to Grey's Anatomy. I think this one right here, there's only two original cast members left in this bad boy out of so many. 21 seasons deep, okay? I think they just continue to go on for the sake of going on, to keep setting a record, to keep moving forward. You've already interchanged Shonda Rhimes, she's not there anymore. Krista Vernoff, she's not there anymore. So you have to keep moving forward with these different showrunners and these different idea people who are changing it every which way, because it's all about this new crop of interns, which is basically a repeat of the original cast members. Of course, there's some different stuff every little bit, but I mean, it's basically the same story. Love is love, but then there's a person involved that shouldn't be involved. Like, oh, maybe I'm married or have a fiance to somebody I really don't like, and then I fall in love with a different intern, and then maybe we should get together, but I have to divorce the fiance, and all of this different love triangle bullshit. It was really good for so long, but then after they killed Derek, that's when I really kind of stopped liking it. I watched it all the way up until the 20th season, but then I was just, I was just done. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. It's like Law and Order, SVU specifically, because it keeps it moving forward without any gaps. But it's sad to see, because what was once so great is no longer not that great. So it sucks. It really does. It's kind of like Brett Favre going to the Minnesota Vikings. Like, it's one of those things where you're sad that they're still there, and it's just one of those things where you're waiting for it to end. That's for sure. But number two for me, Grey's Anatomy.
I think that you nailed it on the head when it's one thing if you bring in a new crop of people, right? That's cool, right? And I'm going to talk about that in a second, because that's what I think differentiates Law and Order from any other show that tries to do this thing that's been around this long, right?
Right.
But when you bring in but then you just tell the same stories with different characters. Because that's really what happened, right? They started, like you said, just telling the same stories with different characters. And that's when you get yourself in trouble. That's when you know you've been around too long. The thing that Law and Order does differently, and which I know everybody's trying to chase Law and Order, because that's like, but what they do differently is they bring in new characters. They've been able to successfully insert different characters throughout all the years, through the 25, 30 years. But the mastermind has never been gone. Dick Wolf is always present, right? They have different showrunners, but Dick Wolf, the guy, he's always there. He makes sure that Law and Order is Law and Order. And then the other thing is, their storylines you don't have to repeat like Grey's Anatomy does, because the way they have it structured, you can continue to always have a different storyline going on. And the reason being is because it's ripped from the headlines, right? So anytime anything happens in real life, it plays into what happens on Law and Order, which is why that show, I think, has been able to successfully do what it's done after all these years. And where Grey's Anatomy starts to fail. Kudos to The Good Doctor for realizing we can only tell so many stories, and then it's time to walk away gracefully. They knew that. So hopefully Grey's Anatomy figures that out and kind of walks away.
Are you still watching The Resident?
No, it can too. I mean, they brought it back on Netflix, really? But yeah, they ended it too.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
they did a little time
canceled.
jump, which after they killed Nikki and time jumped, I was like, what are we doing? Right? Well, I wanted to continue to see that story. I don't like that and I get it. She left because Marvel. she had a storyline going on, but anyway, my number two, I'll be back. No, we don't need you to come back.
No, we don't need you back.
The Terminator. Brilliant first movie. Brilliant. You needed the sequel. You needed Judgment Day because we needed to see that, right? What happens? Did she save the world? Did she not save the world? We needed to see that. Then stop. We did not need to see anything after that. We did not need to know. We did not need to see any other part of it. We didn't need to see in the future. We didn't need to see This is a prime example of taking something that really... I liken this to The Matrix. Like also, just a brilliant standalone movie that should have never even had the sequel, let alone the trilogy. And then they're still going on that fucker too. Just like that's my honorable mention, The Matrix. Just stop. But Terminator, it just wasn't necessary. It was a really cool thing that got you thinking, fuck, this is where we're headed, where computers are going to take over and they're going to fucking eliminate men and mankind. And it's going to be like, it was really interesting. And then it was really interesting to see an attempt to come back and get grown up John and stop him before, interesting. And that like literally is all we needed. That's all we needed. I have nothing else to say on that. I think James Cameron knows it's all we needed. Again, it goes to the theme of our show, cash grab. They're like, fuck, this was groundbreaking. This was the biggest movie of all time the summer that T2 came out, Judgment Day. Oh, you'd never seen technology like that before. It was groundbreaking special effects. It was all, okay, so what? It doesn't mean you have to keep going with it. Just let that be very cool and then move on. And when even Cameron lost interest and walked away from it, when they started making Terminators without Cameron, you should have known it was going to be in trouble. You just can't do Terminator without Cameron, and even he didn't want to do them. So, my number 2, Terminator. Stop. That there's rumors again that there's another one. Stop.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention my honorable mention first because it's kind of just like a theory. Maybe this should have happened because of the distress that it's in now. Should Star Wars have just ended with the Skywalker saga? Like that, it's so unfortunate to even say that because I am such a big Star Wars fan, but in the disarray that it is now, like, should it have just stopped after the first, 6 films? Which is it hurts. It really hurts.
Oh, you don't even think 9? You don't think it should have been the trilogy? I mean, No,
yeah, I don't, because I mean this last trilogy with Rey, no one really liked. I mean, I liked it. I didn't have a problem with it. I'm a Star Wars fan, so it really anything they put out, I'm gonna have my critiques and be curious on why they chose what they chose as far as the storyline. But I overall enjoyed it. I honestly really loved Rise of the Skywalker. Like that last one when they brought back Palpatine and all of the Force ghosts being with her at the very end. I thought that was very special. But whatever. People are gonna hate, they're gonna hate. But it's unfortunate. Like should it have just ended with the 6, the prequels and the originals, which it hurts to say that.
I would agree with you, but I would maintain that it needed to be the 9. But here's where my problem is. They got into trouble. I think the 9 would have been perfect, but Lucas wasn't involved. Lucas had those back 3 written. Yeah. He had the story. He had the plan. And this is rare because I don't normally critique Iger very often, but I'm going to because Iger basically screwed him. He said, okay, great. You've got these scripts. We want to do these. It's going to be awesome. And he basically screwed him into selling Lucasfilm to Disney and then didn't do Lucas's stories for the back 3. And Iger to this day will probably tell you that was a big mistake. He has since tried to court Lucas over and over and over to get him back on the good side, right? And I have no doubt that if we had seen Lucas's original storylines for those back 3, they would have been stellar, right? We wouldn't have seen Rey and Kylo would have been twins. They would have been the kids, right? They went straying away from that just didn't work for me. I'm like, I like the Rise of Skywalker like you too, but why would you mess with that? The whole point of them being Han Solo and Leia's kids would just. To go away from that didn't make sense to me.
No.
But so anyway, I'm with you. I think, don't get me wrong, I'm glad we got The Mandalorian. I'm glad we got Ahsoka. But that's all within that Skywalker storyline.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'd be fine if it had just been the original 9 and then we walked away. I will say this. I think that the reason that there's fatigue there, and I'm not the only one. I think that, we see this come up all the time. Kathleen Kennedy needs to fucking go.
Yeah.
She's just not doing well running the ship. I know she was the right-hand man to Lucas, but it was Lucas. and she basically did what Lucas wanted, and she's not now, and she's not the mastermind that Lucas was, and she's making mistakes, and she's hurting the franchise, in my opinion. If you're going to keep the franchise around, get rid of Kennedy. That's all I'm saying. Anyway,
Agreed.
time for your number one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my number one goes to James Bond. I think the James Bond series is far played out. I mean, the spy espionage thriller type thing, I think it's very played out. I mean, I know they do very well at the box office, but in my opinion, you do get the same stories over and over and over and over again. And I mean, I just have a big gripe with that because it's very repetitive and they're very entertaining, but they're basically what the the historical filmmakers like a Scorsese or like, those type of directors, those are the films that they don't talk shit about, but they talk shit about Marvel, but they're really the same thing. So what's the difference? Just because there's a little bit more class, there's a little bit more martinis, there's more sex, like, what? It's the same thing. It's explosions, it's high chase scenes, it's fight sequences. So I just feel like this in particular, it's been played out for many years. The James Bond franchise has been going on for decades. So it's just, I think it's time to close the chapter on it, but that'll never happen because they're looking for the next one. So yeah, my number one, James Bond.
I think that what people need to understand, and if you're a fan of Ian Fleming and the books, and now the Warfare of Gentlemen Men, I can't even say the fucking name of that thing, where you find out the person that this is actually based on, right? That Ian Fleming actually based all this on. But the important thing I think that people have lost track of over the years with making all these movies is that James Bond is not a person. James Bond is a code name. 007 James Bond slash 007. It's a code name. And I think where they've gotten in trouble over all these years, what has it been, like 40, 50 years now that they've been making these things?
Something like that.
It's always the same. It's always the same guy. It's always, it's James Bond doesn't have to be a suave British playboy kind of a guy. It can be a woman. It can be, a black man. It can be an Indian. It can be. It was never meant to be just the same person. And I think that's where they ran into trouble. If you want to continue this franchise and you want to freshen it up and you want to change it up, give us different James Bonds. Let us see 007 be a woman. Let us see 007 be an Asian or whatever the case may be, because that's what it was meant to be. It was never supposed to be the same guy. And so that, in my opinion, I'm with you. I'm right there with you. If we're going to continue to get the suave, debonair, playboy, British guy, then it's time to let it go. It's time to end it. It's time to move on. But if we can get different characters, if we can get different James Bonds, I'd like to see if they can do that. I'd like to see if they could continue the franchise that way, but I don't know.
Because London is such a hub for, people from all around the world.
Yes.
So you could get so many different ethnicities, so many different backgrounds, so many different accents. Like you could, but that never happens.
Yeah, no. And the author himself has said it's not that James Bond is just a name. It's not so I don't know. Okay, my number one, I've said this numerous times. This is going to be no secret to anybody. It's time to move the fuck on, you guys. The Bachelor. I'm so fucking... How are people still watching this? Yeah. One couple is still married. One couple. Like, it's been on for how many decades? And one couple is married. Like, it's fucking awful. It's disgusting. It promotes everything wrong in society. Like, and I'm not saying that marriage is an institute that is for everybody. I'm not trying to claim any religion or any kind of a thing. But I'm just saying, when we put a show on that's basically approving and pushing this. I don't want my daughter watching a show that promotes sleeping with a bunch of different guys all within a short period of time, or being reckless or stupid like that. It just, for me, it promotes everything wrong about morals and society and what to expect. This is not real love. It's just not. And the idea that it continues, and then the spawns with the Bachelorette and Fuckboy Island and like all these things that have come from this fucking stupid ass show. Is this what we want to promote? Is this the kind, and the idea that it's still so popular and that so many people watch this piece of shit? I don't get it.
Because it's not even generational anymore. They got the Golden Bachelor, and now they're about to have the Golden Bachelorette.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, just be better. Be better than this. Society is better than this. Have more self-respect for yourself. Have more self-esteem. Like, this is just a terrible, trashy show.
Is this the biggest property coming out of Disney that you hate?
Yes! Yes! We don't need this, man. Again, this has nothing to do with my thoughts on marriage. It has nothing to do with my thoughts on responsible sex. If you want to sleep around, great, but be responsible about it. To me, this just sends every wrong message imaginable for society, and I think it's time to let it go. Can we just fucking put this show to bed and everything that spawned from it? Just put it away. Just put it away.
Goodness. That's so funny. Well, we want to know, what are your top 5 franchise properties, or the one that sticks out to you the most? What's the franchise property that went on too long? Be sure to comment below in the comment section. Add us on X, Threads, all the good places. We love the fan interaction. It's so fun.
It is.
All right.